I've thought a lot about this, and I want you to correct me where you think I'm wrong. But I feel like a friendly Iran is actually better for America. I feel like I've watched Trump take out Maduro. He didn't engage in regime change. The regime is still there. They're currently cooperating. I've watched him end 8 conflicts. I watched the previous 12-day war that everybody said was going to be $1 trillion endeavor and go on forever, be in fact 12 days and defang Iran. And I'm thinking, like, these people are being slaughtered. And I can't tell if it's me being exceptionally emotional about the footage that I'm seeing. If it's me thinking they're the number one funders of terror. They were enriching uranium, not to turn the lights on. And I wake up this morning to this clip, and I want to know what you think about this.
Where do things stand with Iran? The U.S. has got sizable military assets.
You know, we have a lot of ships going that direction, just in case. We have a big flotilla going in that direction. And we'll see what happens. It's a big force. We have a big force going toward Iran. I'd rather not see anything happen, but we're watching them very closely. I stopped 837 hangings on Thursday. They would have been dead. Every one of them would have been hung. This is like from 1,000 years ago. This is an ancient culture. Very smart people, by the way, but it's an ancient culture. 837, mostly young men, were going to be hung.
So he's sending in a flotilla, an armada. What do you make of this? Do you think this is good or bad? Where do you see this going? What did I get wrong?
No, I think when it comes to this whole concept of American first foreign policy and what exactly does that look like, I think there's a lot of people that have interpreted that as, well, we're just not getting involved in any more foreign conflicts. And look, I'm sympathetic to that as someone that's lived at the business end of what I consider to be somewhat poorly thought out U.S. foreign policy. Right. I certainly don't want the United States involved in wars for which we have no business being involved. However, to your point about Iran, they are one of the leading global sponsors of terrorism. They've been an enemy to the United States for, several decades. Right. And we've had to engage with Iran before several times, not just with the Trump and the last strike on the nuclear facilities, but also when Reagan had to deploy the fleet because they were mining the Straits of Hormuz, and they hit a U.S. I think it was a U.S. frigate at the time, and within the space of 48 hours, we sunk a quarter of their Navy, and they got the message. It was like, oh, maybe we shouldn't screw with the United States. One of the things I've appreciated about Donald Trump is that he understands that using military power doesn't mean you have to engage in a multi-decade nation-building experiment to try to bring parliamentary democracy to a portion of the world that doesn't want it. Sometimes it's just enough to be able to flex U.S. power in a way that gets our point across and achieves our objectives. So I don't think Donald Trump is going to, again, invade Iran. I don't think the 82nd Airborne is going to be dropping into Tehran. I think what he's going to do is he's going to use the sort of military power that minimizes the risk of U.S. casualties, but also maximizes our ability to make surgical strikes where needed in order to achieve larger regional objectives. And so I definitely think we're watching Iranians bravely fight against a despotic, tyrannical, Islamist regime that constantly oppresses them and exports terror to the rest of the world. So I would love to see them win. I don't think it's the overall responsibility of the United States to give them all the tools to do so, but I do think it would be appropriate for us to be able to project necessary power in order to assist them. They have demonstrated that they are willing to fight. They have demonstrated that they are willing to sacrifice. And those are one of the things that I look at from my experience, not just studying warfare, but engaging in counterinsurgency warfare, is that if you don't have a base of the population that is willing to fight and sacrifice in order to overthrow the regime, you don't have a good mechanism from which to start with. Iran has that.
Right.
And so I want to see U.S. power projected in such a way as to be able to help these people take control of their own country and overthrow a government that hates the United States and the West.
Okay. So then you are for the nuance of this conversation. And I can't tell you, I watch so many people who, and I appreciate nobody wants the forever wars. Everybody's traumatized from Iraq and Afghanistan. We've talked it into the ground, the U.S. and regime change. But there is also so much nuance here that you just highlighted. And I see people who basically are like, we shouldn't get involved, and this is our imperialism, and you're watching people be slaughtered. And I'm thinking, do you really want this on your conscience? Like, if you don't really have a full grasp on the nuances of the things you're discussing, or the fact that maybe this isn't necessarily United States imperialism, and it's possible, although I wonder if Donald Trump could be intimidated, that so much of his base is thinking, you know, you waffled, you were a traitor, you didn't make good on America first. I just don't know how you live with that. I cannot believe all the people who are sitting there saying, like, just stay out of it, just stay out of it. But maybe I'm wrong. You know, I'm not sending my 18-year-old into a war like that.
Well, and my 20-year-old is currently in the 101st Airborne Division as an infantryman, right? So, like, this is a price that my family has been very familiar with, both when I was in the military and now my son being in the military. Again, I think one of the things that needs to be understood is the United States does play a role in the world.
Right.
We've never been a totally isolationist country, because isolation is not really feasible. And it doesn't really make sense if you're looking at things from an American first foreign policy. It's the same thing with Venezuela. Look, when Donald Trump said we're going to run Venezuela, I went right out to social media and said, okay, I have some questions. All right, because before we start trying to do this, I want to know exactly what the plan is. Yeah. And thus far, President Trump has run the operation in Venezuela very differently than any other U.S. president in my lifetime probably would have. Again, he hasn't deployed tens of thousands of U.S. troops. Do I think some troops will be involved in Venezuela? Yes. But I think he's actually demonstrating now that it could be a relatively small contingent in order to achieve a very positive outcome for the United States.
All right, guys, if you like this clip and you want to watch the full episode, click here. And if you want more content like this, you can subscribe to the show by clicking here.